Go ahead, Nicole. Yeah.
Okay. The Lord gave me a vision during the worship music, but Tim basically prayed it. So do you want to hear it still?
Yeah. Yeah.
It was quite interesting to hear your prayer because it was just what I saw. So that's neat. There was a long, dark road, and the road was, thank you, and it was cold. And there was car lights on the road to light the way. Then I saw a light, like a helicopter, sort of, its lights to light the way. And then I saw feet walking the road with flashlights to light the way. And they walked along this path with their flashlights in the dark. And when they held them up ahead to see what was ahead, there were things in the way. I saw I saw deer in the way, and they kind of went around it, moved it, or however. And when you look straight ahead, you can see that they're heading toward this mountain. And has snow on it, it's cold. And the way is sort of windy back and forth, you could see. But as they began to approach the mountain, the road changed to be straight. And you could see in front of them that there were many going up the mountain ahead of them without light. It was dark. There was no light but moonlight. There was the moonlight. But there was no light that they carried with them to put in front of them. Off to the right, they headed up the mountain just a little bit. And at the foot of the mountain, not the bottom, but like a few little ways up off and to the right, you could see this building and its doors were open. And it looked like a little church, like one of those little churches that you see, you know, in a small town, it's white with a little thing on top. But when the doors were open, it was bright in there and warm in there. And all the people ahead of these people with the flashlights went in. And they went in running into this church. And they went in and sat and were warm and whatever. And the rest of the people with the lights made the journey towards the top of the hill.
So also with a flashlight?
Who?
The rest?
There was a group of people that were with the flashlight.
They continued. They didn't
They
stop.
Continued.
Yes.
Okay.
And you can see the flashlight too, and it kind of looked, you could see, and then I got it like a aerial view. And the flashlight sort of was looking back and forth, and they made their way up this snowy hill. And then I got this aerial view of what was on top, and it was this, I think it was the house of God. Like, I think it was, I don't know if it was in Jerusalem, like the temple or what, but I say it was the house of God because what was inside was the throne of the Lord. And so the doors they opened, they were huge, tall doors, thin, and they opened, and I was looking down. The building was brightly lit.
Wow.
And I was looking down at the building, and the doors opened, and they went in.
You were like a little ant here, right?
Yeah.
Just big toward
Yeah. It was like Lord of the Rings style. It was beautiful. It was...
double door.
Yes, double doors, tall.
With like
Great.
pillars,
Very,
right?
yes, very grand. And then when they went in, and this is a huge room. I think they see red in there. Like, I think the decorations there was some red in there. But they went forward, and you can see the throne, and Jesus is on the right side. And they approached the throne.
That's the court of God. So,
Okay.
Go ahead.
And I think at first they bow down, but then they get up and they come forward. And Jesus steps off of the throne. Well, he stands up. And he grabs something that's sort of off to his right. And it's this little box. And you can tell it's a beautiful box. I can't see it fully, but you know it's just beautiful. And he walks down the steps towards these people. And I want to get this right, so forgive me if I slow down a little bit to remember what was seen. he walks down and he touches the shoulder of the one. They're sort of in a line. And there's one at the front. And they're in a line off to the right. These other people. And the first person he walks and approaches, he hands the box to him with one hand and puts his hand on him with the other. A lot of embracing in this time. Like Jesus embraces everybody in this time. But he walks up to the man and just holds him and hands him this box. And at the same time that he hands him this box, this part all happens at once. He hands him the box, and they become light. They no longer need the light that they brought. They become that light, and it sort of comes over their bodies, like, becomes who they are and just kind of covers them. At that exact same time, a bird comes down, and when it comes down, it looks like a dove, but it hovers like a hummingbird, like it stays still. And to each one of their mouths, it places bread. I think it's bread. And that happens at the same time he hands him the box. And the first man, he opens the box, and Jesus is telling him something. He leans in and starts talking to him and just explaining something to him. And I think there's like a little scroll inside this box, like scripture almost, or something written to this man, and he just begins to receive that. And then he comes over to the next man and he embraces him. And he begins to talk to him as well. And then he pours from this goldish, it's very strange. The thing that he has is like this, almost this vase with a handle, but the top of it's like a flower a little bit. And he pours grain or something into this bag, into the sack. And that man takes that sack and puts it on his back. And he converses with this man and talks with this man. Then there's a third person.
Sack of seeds.
I think it is, yeah. Yeah. And then this third person, I think he was bound. I think he came forward with his hands bound with these shackles on it. And the Lord took them off. And he replaced it with this one gold bracelet. And he put it on his arm. And then he held that arm up. And he put his other arm over his heart. And he still held the man and he spoke to him. Then there was one more man. And he embraced him too. And he turned him around. And he sort of held him on his side and pointed out. And he began to tell him things like direction. And, I don't know if he told him. I mean, this is a lot of what I heard in Tim's prayer. Just like, I don't know. Anyway. And so he had the man in his embrace, and he's just pointing, with the man pointing too, like he's basically directing him, and the man's pointing, and Jesus is pointing, and they're just he's kind of showing him things, like directing him, showing him how, I don't know if it's to build something or to what to do, but it's very much
instruction of construction, something.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, and then there was one more, and I think that this person made the journey with them, but I think it was the accuser, because I don't think the light was on this being at all. Its clothes were still raggedy, and its body was dry and dead, almost like bones. And I'm not sure if that being hands the Lord this item, or if the Lord takes this item. But it's one of those time things with the sand. Yes, the hourglass. So he takes his hourglass, and it's gold, and it's clear with the sand inside, but the casing is, I think, gold. And he starts to unscrew the time with the sand in it, and he dumps the sand out. And this part was kind of unclear for me, because it was almost like at that point it was over for that being, and it came out of those bones and those clothes with wings, and I think it was done and bound, and I think it was thrown into something, but it didn't look like fire to me. But it was so choppy at this point that it was hard to say. So that's what everything was very clear until this point, and that part was sort of not completely clear. And that was the end of it.
That's all this region, so. So we have 5 people?
5, yep.
I think each form represents the 4 faces of God, actually. So the receiving from God. Like the 4 creatures in the face of God, so each receiving the essence that what that means, because the 4 faces of God represent the 4, the word grace might be difficult, 4 engagements, 4 we can talk more, but most of the time we're talking from a perspective of man's the impact or what man need. We don't necessarily understand it's God's nature. He designed, he has divine way to reveal himself, to allow himself to be imparted to the world, to this recipient. In this case, is the interaction through the Son of God that is being imparted. So the format, the first 4 evidently represent the recipient for that 4 strains, 4 temperaments rather, 4 economies God. We see, okay, so now if we can even dare to say it's 4 ages actually, through the ages. Now let me think about it. I don't actually have a clarity with what I'm saying, okay, just give you the impression. So some blurting out things I can take for a long time for me to even consolidate what I'm saying right now. So, but just for the moment, that the Spirit does what He does. So
There were angels there too, or winged things. I saw wings in that room.
angels, okay.
I didn't see any faces or anything, but there were wings there.